able to talk a little bit about your career, your running career, just, same stuff you kind of gave the athletes that night.
Yeah.
And then just a little bit of like, like what you've seen and kind of how life's, been kind of interesting for you. Perfect. But yeah, that'll be the camera. We don't need to look at it though.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? You've done one of these before,
Yeah.
I'd imagine. Yeah. Did you do with Joe?
No, I've done this with Vespa, a couple different podcasts.
Nice, man.
I've run with their products. And so it's super.
Are you doing St. George this weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's up in Logan. Well, I guess I just did 27 miles yesterday, just on the weekend, a little training.
I did 10 miles and I'm like, man, here we go.
I did Top Utah the week before and it was a good race.
Oh, man. Yeah. I heard it was beautiful this time.
So nice. It's actually a little cold.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet. Like yesterday, 91. Bloody hell. It was nuts.
Yeah.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank all of you so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. We greatly appreciate you doing so. As always, keep an eye on that website, Addict to Athlete. You'll find all of our backlog podcasts, information about the team, and our upcoming events calendar. It's always nice to be able to have that at your ready access so you can see what the team's doing, come out and meet the team, join the team if you're struggling with mental health or addiction, and kind of what we do in the team, erasing and replacing. Athlete's got a great guest in studio today, one that I've looked forward to talking to for quite a while. And I was just explaining to him, his cohort, Sean Christian, who came in not too long ago to do a podcast, ran into some technical difficulties. So I owe him an apology, but that was just warm up, priming the pump for what's coming next. But today we have Mark Sanderson, who I think is one of the most amazing guys to help, I think, push the running community in a positive direction the last several years, where he's done some epic events, been able to host and race direct quite a few, but really became a friend of Team Addict to Athlete from the beginning, as we have family members that run in the same circles. And Mark, you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you carving out some time with us today. Why don't you introduce yourself, give these listeners a little bit about your background, and let's jump into this, because I think we got a lot to talk about today, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Blue. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm Mark Sanderson. I'm 53 years old.
You don't look it.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, every day I look in the mirror, it's like, how can you be so old, right?
Nice.
Got a beautiful wife, Jessica. We've been married 35 years, 5 kids, 6 grandkids. And it's probably why I started running early. We had our kids early and young, and Jessica and I were running marathons, kind of like it's our only opportunity to get any alone time, honestly.
Nice.
Leave the kids in bed, run circles around the block, be out for 5 or 6 miles. And
I love it.
It's just our time.
Your time together.
Yeah. But I've been running a long time. Actually, St. George Marathon is this weekend.
Yeah.
This will be my 33rd year in a row.
No way.
I haven't missed other than the COVID year.
The COVID, yeah.
But I had to go down that weekend and do the marathon anyway.
That is awesome.
You just don't get credit for it.
So you did it. You just didn't get it on the reg. I love it, man.
So really it'd be 32 officially, but 33 in a row for me.
You count that. Absolutely.
I've got a pretty good work-related history. I mean, all through high school, I always wanted to be a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple of buddies, Darren Brown, Jeff Swenson, who had older brothers that were cops,
right,
for Orem City. And so me, Darren, Jeff, we're going to be cops our whole life. So sure enough, the day I turned 21, Pleasant Grove hired me. You got to be 21 to be a cop.
Yeah.
Can't be busting in bars and arresting people.
You can't even go in there legally.
Go in the bar legally.
Funny.
And so I noticed really quickly after being a high school athlete that marriage and sedative lifestyle, still active,
mm-hmm.
but not doing your high school sports every day. I started putting on a little weight, and I just didn't want to go down that path. So I had a buddy. I really owe all of my running to a buddy named Stoney Brooks. Oh. He lived up the street from me. Big old guy. He was always a Clydesdale, big, tall, bald guy. Here I'm the short, little bald guy.
Yeah.
But one day I grabbed him and asked him, dude, what are you doing? He's sweating like a madman. He's a big guy.
What's happening?
He said he was training for the St. George Marathon. And I'm like, all right, I want to do it too. So this was back in 1992.
No way.
In June. And I started training in June. And I kept, back in the day, I had a paper calendar, printed, copied, and I kept
good old days. Yeah.
Well, 3 months of training, I went down and busted out a 3:32, and I swore I'd never run again the rest of my life. I
You're
thought I
like,
was going to die.
that was nuts.
Worst,
Never
yeah.
again.
I mean, it was just hard and
Awesome,
painful.
man.
I waited clear till the next summer before I started training again.
Yeah.
That's
the
how
winter
long
off.
it took.
Yeah.
That's how long it took to get the bad memories out, and started training again. Signed up, and then I turned to 315, but I still had the same mentality.
Yeah.
This sucks.
Yeah.
It hurts. It's painful. Took the went back the next year, and I ran 252, which
Good grief.
I think that's what got me hooked.
And that one didn't hurt? That one had to have hurt.
Well, it actually didn't hurt.
I love it.
And it convinced me that I can run faster, and I need to train all year long.
That is genius.
So from then on, so it's been 1995, then I've just been year round running, always running. My fastest marathon is at St. George in 1997. I ran 238.
That is incredible.
And I hit a 240, 241, 240 and some change multiple times, but finally busted the 240 with the 238. And I haven't got any close to it since then.
Yeah.
So
but you raised that bar for yourself. That's amazing.
That was
man.
great.
That is wild.
My running. So I mean, that kind of takes me through, why I started running.
Yeah.
And then what got me hooked, actually.
Absolutely.
And then with my career, I transferred out of the PD and went to the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, both jobs are physically fit.
For sure.
You got to be in shape. You're going to chase the bad guy, or you're going to put the fire out. And
Mm-hmm.
so physical fitness and running is what just basically has kept me healthy throughout the last 32 years of my career.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Happen to be ready at any time.
Yeah, it's been good. I did my running. I kind of got bored with marathoning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what's next? What can I do?
Yeah. Once you achieve a few of those and you've done the same race over and over, you're like, something's got to expand.
Yes, we have this local race. It's Squaw Peak 50-mile race. Matter of fact, your guys are always, I mean, a lot of the races, this is what I appreciate about the Addicts athletes is you guys volunteer all your time.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've helped Sean and I with our Timp Trail Marathon,
mm-hmm.
and I know you've helped with Squaw Peak and the local races. And
Absolutely.
so very much appreciate that get your team out there helping
Thank you.
all of us. And they're amazing athletes themselves who run all of our races.
Yeah.
But the Squaw Peak 50-mile race was like the next challenge. And it's kind of funny because I look back and being a what I'd consider a fast marathoner.
Yeah.
I jumped on the elite girls in this ultra race, and
man,
I treated this 50-miler. I treated it like a marathon. So up until mile 26, when you leave the road up Hobble Creek,
yep,
I'd busted it out like in 4 hours.
Oh my gosh, Mark.
I mean, I hit a couple gels, and that was it. No food, but I mean, I
felt good. You're like, yeah.
The second I left the pavement from that aid station,
mm-hmm.
it took me 3 hours to go from 26 to mile 33 at Little Valley.
Oh man.
I mean, the wheels came off. Lug nuts didn't even loosen. The wheels just
popped right off.
I finished that race in 12 hours and 45 minutes. So 8 hours and 45 minutes to do the back half.
The back half.
50-miler.
You didn't save any for the back half.
No, I had none.
Oh, man.
And that's where all your climb is.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Windy Pass. I thought I was going to die. But then that got me hooked into the trail stuff because I'm like,
I love it.
It's all training, it's hydration, it's nutrition. And I just realized
it's a different beast.
Yeah, I liked it. I loved it. So that next year I jumped into the Wasatch 100 and then the Grand Slam of ultra running, which is Vermont, Western States.
Good grief.
Leadville and then Wasatch.
Leadville. My gosh. Yeah.
So I've done some big races.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing though. Yeah, you're right. Road running from 5, 10, half and full marathons to trail running, it's a different beast and you've got to respect it. That's what I loved about watching the athletes as they were increasing their stamina, their strength, their endurance, was when they kind of started to gravitate away from the road and get into the mountains. There's something very physically daunting yet spiritually awakening about being out there like that. It feels pretty primal to a certain degree because the only way to go is up. And I love Squaw Peak because once you get past Little Valley or once you get to the Windy Pass and all that kind of stuff, it's like there's there's no
10
turning
rounds,
back.
yeah, and you're 10
You
miles,
have to finish. Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, but
no option.
you fell in love with the trail after doing squaw, which usually turns people away, but
Yeah.
you found that there was something bigger
Yeah,
out
it was
there.
the challenge. It was just the challenge of, okay, how could I feel so crappy
Mm-hmm.
back half, and how much faster could I go?
Yeah.
I mean, so over a series of I've done Squaw Peak now 15 times. My fastest time was 9 hours and 11 minutes.
Incredible.
So when I look at that compared to the 4 hours or the 8 hours and 45 minutes it took me for the back half
Yeah.
versus 9 hours and 11 minutes, give me another, what's that, 36 minutes, and I would have done the whole race,
Dude,
crazy.
that's wild.
Yeah.
That is absolutely wild. And I think that's kind of a beautiful thing too. I love the fact that you didn't let that challenge like scare you away. I mean, obviously, the one thing I noticed about running when we first started with Addict to Athlete, marrying into the Thurston family, which you are very familiar with, all the Thurstons. I had no idea what running did. Like, it was pretty wild. And then to understand that there's a mental health component to it. When I started Addict to Athlete, as we were running and people were starting to talk about, it was a little bit deeper, a little bit more like, what they thought, suppressed. I was kind of blown away by that. And it mimics a therapeutic modality called EMDR therapy, which makes perfect sense why running in and of itself like took hold of you. Because when you're dealing with law enforcement, when you're dealing with fire and medical and all these things, you had to have an escape route and a path to soothe some of all that stuff, or else you just carried it with you. And I think each time you went out and ran, you left a little bit behind with the knowledge that I can do this. How did that kind of determination and just kind of like ability to like put you kind of like first to a lot of degrees? Because if you don't get out there and work through the stuff, let it go at the same time, doing something you enjoy, if you didn't have running, what do you think life would look like for you if it was, all the stress with no outlet?
Oh, Blue, I would have totally found some other coping mechanism, whether it was alcohol, drugs, something. I mean, I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
have a very addictive personality. Yes,
Yeah,
my wife,
for sure.
whatever you do, you're like all in. And so if it's, and even running to a certain point isn't healthy at some of the levels that I've
Yeah,
ran at. But yeah, I would have found some other coping mechanism. I'm sure it wouldn't have been healthy.
for sure.
It's interesting you bring up our, is that 33 years ago, I mean, that wasn't a
It
thing,
wasn't a thing.
and then you're in public safety, you're a big badass cop or a little bald badass cop,
Yeah.
or a little fireman, and therapy's not an issue. You just got to be tough no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And you see the worst things, even as the cop, it sucks because you're there helping, but you're arresting the other half of the family. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So it's always a negative whenever you're doing. Then you go to the fireside. Worst case scenario, somebody's dying. You're doing
Yeah.
CPR. Well, they die. That sucks, but you did everything you could. So
There.
there was just this inherent love for the fireside because it was always positively negative.
Right.
But I'll tell you, I'll never forget probably where running, well, looking back, where
Mhm.
running fixed my career from a psychological or mental health perspective was I'm a brand new cop. It was my first year in Pleasant Grove. And I'd just been training that one summer.
Yeah.
And it happened to be just the outlet I needed. I ended up doing CPR on my boss, the police chief's father, who lived
Mm.
3 houses down the street from me. So I grew
No
up knowing
kidding.
him.
Yeah.
And I remember it was just one of those events. It was super sad. And I was working a swing shift. I got off like 11 o'clock in the evening, and I got home and told Jessica I just need to go for a run,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how I dealt with that emotional side of losing a family friend, somebody you'd known your whole life.
Absolutely.
And I feel like from that point on, every bad or critical incident I went ended up in a big ass long run, man.
That is amazing.
Sometimes, and there were times where I'd get home and I'd run all night. I think the longest I ever did following one of those calls is probably about 35, 36 miles.
Yeah. Really.
And but I'd get home, I'd be fine, get a couple hours sleep, go back to work, and didn't think another thing
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
It
You
just
left
pushed
it
it
out
out.
there. I
Yep.
love that. I've read this statistic. I wish I could find it again because it was kind of, like one eyed when I was reading it, but it was talking about running like being this natural pull for people that go through trauma and things of that nature. Meaning, like they started noticing after September 11th in 2001, they noticed that race entries and running shoe sales like skyrocketed.
Hmm.
And each time there's a natural disaster or something, or something heavy happens to the country, they can see an uptick in this. So I don't think it's very, I guess, uncommon for people to have that primal pull to like move, to not just stay stuck with it. And I think the people that do end up getting stuck with it, those are the ones that fall and slip into the deeper depression, and that grief cycle just doesn't seem to let go. So it makes perfect sense to me. I love it. But you've done tons of races, amazing locations. You mentioned Leadville, all these kind of like epic places. I mean, Leadville in and of itself, that's insane. When I first got introduced to that place, what's been some of the ones that really kind of transformed you, that you kind of left, I'm going to say, a little bit more emotionally open and a little bit more mentally fit than maybe when you started? Because there's so many of those out there that I think can not just have a good experience, but can change us, like through difficulties, through struggles. I mean, for you, what are some of the events that you've left a changed person, maybe a little bit humbled? I don't know. You pick the emotion, but I know you've got some of those bankroll that are like, wow, this was significant in my life.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I kind of got forced into what I'm doing now through a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
I mean, I marathoning and the ultra running, and then occasionally it was almost like every other year. I was getting bored with running, so I'd throw in a triathlon.
Yeah.
It's
Sprinkle
kind of
it.
where I first got introduced to just Ironman races. And I
Mhm.
got to tell you a story just because it's hilarious,
Please.
because it's with Elena Thurston.
Uh-huh.
And she's a brand new firefighter with Orem Fire. She's the first girl Orem's ever hired. I mean, we got firefighters whose wives are freaking out because we've got a girl in the fire station now. Elena's blonde hair. She's attractive, and wives are intimidated. We've
Yeah,
never had a woman in the fire
absolutely.
station. Well, I'm confident in my relationship with Jessica, and so I just volunteered. Put Elena with me. Let us be partners.
Yeah.
So she and I end up together, and a great friendship. First thing we do is we get our spouses together, go to dinner, get to know each other.
Yeah.
And to this day, her and Jessica are really good friends, which I appreciate.
It's true.
Um, she's funny because she talked about what a swimmer she was. And
Mhm.
this is right
Oh my
before
gosh, yeah.
this is right before the Utah Ironman. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'm still running fast marathons, but I started to bike and I've been swimming, and I feel like I'm as fit as I've ever been. I
Right.
look back, I'm as lean and fast as I think I've ever been. And Elena, I could never get her to run with me. Not even one time around
That's
the track.
very
She's like,
true.
not running.
Yep.
Um,
That's funny.
no matter how much I coursed her, I couldn't do it. Well, she mentioned that she wanted to go swimming with me one morning. And I remember just looking at her like, you can swim?
Really.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Come on. I'm fit, I'm fast, and I swim really good. So we go to the pool. Damn, man. We dove in the first 50 meters. We finished. She pulls up at the wall. And I mean, I swam my try to
I
keep up
learned
with
the hard
her.
way too.
She is a swimmer.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, that gave me a whole new appreciation for, you know, just the perspective of how someone looks, how they act, what they do, what they don't do, and
Yeah.
what actually everybody's capable of. She opened my
100%.
eyes. It was crazy.
Yeah, I learned that hard way too with those Thurstons at Lake Powell. Like, let's swim to that island. And by the time I poked my head out of the water, they were on their way back. And
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
know.
can't do this.
Yeah. Amazing swimmers. Amazing swimmers. But getting back to um, the races that really impacted me, I was telling you that
Yeah.
I was bored with well, I wasn't bored, but I'd done a lot of the marathons and ultras.
Yeah.
And I got this cancer diagnosis December of 2016.
And sick. Were you feeling
No,
down,
it
or
was the
was it just
craziest thing. I'd
routine
actually
thing?
retired from the fire service
Yeah.
2015, and I started working at Mountain Point Medical Center, the new hospital in
Yeah.
Lehi. We had this little cardiac calcium scan test they just brought into the hospital.
Hmm.
Signs out in the front lobby, $69. This test will save your life. And I'd looked at it multiple times.
Yeah. You're like,
And this
huh.
one morning, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go do this. Went and did the test. Took 10 minutes. Scan your chest. I walk over into radiology because I'm just being an employee.
Yeah.
I'm flipping through my own slides and I find this mass in my chest. I'm like, what is that? Grab the radiologist.
You're checking the name and you're like, what the heck?
What is that?
Yeah.
That's not supposed to be there. Well, long story short, it ends up being a giant lymph node. It's infected. Bunch of different subsequent tests. I land at the University of Utah. They do some biopsies, and sure enough, 2 weeks later, I'm at Huntsman, for the next 7 months, going through a bunch of chemo treatments. And
good night.
I didn't run a single day. Didn't run a single day through that 7 months of treatment, but the benefit I had was that I had a chemo pole that I was attached to. I was in the hospital 24/7, and luckily for my wife, we put a new colored wig on my IV pole, and I pushed it in circles, 5 miles, 3 to 5 miles every day, walking in circles around the nurse's station.
Back to the basics.
Yep, back to the basics. And so I came out of that. Luckily for me,
good grief, brother.
Healed, hopefully cured.
Yeah,
with a stem cell transplant. But what it did was all the chemotherapy, it wrecked my lungs. And so trying to,
you kind of need those to run.
You got to have them,
but
trying to get, I'm running now multiple days, but I can't do the elevation stuff.
God.
So the high altitude, the 14,000 feet, 12,000 feet at Leadville, even Wasatch 100 with all of the elevation, 28,000 feet of climb, just kicks my butt.
You feel it?
Yeah, I feel it big time. So I got this buddy, Steve Kissel, one of my best friends. He got me, he really saved me. He actually showed up to our Timp Trail Marathon. This would have been in 2018.
Gotcha.
And he had finished our race, and I knew he was registered for Wasatch. So as he was leaving our race, I chased him down the parking lot and asked him if he needed some pacers,
right?
Because I'd want to start getting back into the mountains and just see what I could do. And
for sure,
I jumped on board with him, planning to pace him for that Wasatch 100. And he really did save my life. He got me off the couch. He got me back on the trails. And over the course of that summer, I was re-engaged and back hooked on running some marathons and then some ultra races. But what he was doing was these multi-day races. I'd never even heard of them. And it's a lot. They're all over the country, but they're 24 hours, 48 hours. But there's a 6-day race. It's across the years, 144 hours.
Good grief.
Down at Camelback Ranch in Arizona.
Yeah.
And it's a 1-mile track. And you start, and 6 days later, whatever your mileage is, that's how far you went.
That's how far you went. So you have a lot of time. How much you put in is up to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can take breaks. There's people that take a break, come off the track, go to the movie, take their wife to dinner, come back to the track. It's just a 6-day event.
My kind of race, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So I jumped into this across the years race just to go see what I could do. And of course they had this challenge. It's called Around the Clock.
Right.
And only one person had ever completed it. So crazy in my head. I'm like, I can do it. And what it means is,
I got this.
Is for 144 hours, you have to click 1 mile within every one of the 144 hours.
No kidding.
So you can see the problem with that is you're not going to get any prolonged sleep.
No good sleep.
You got to get a tick every hour. Well, and I did fine. And for days, I'd busted out quite a few miles.
2 or 3 days.
Yeah. And then, the sleep deprivation starts to kick in.
Oh,
because what you do, you'd end up with a 20-minute power nap and jump back in, and you have to go catch that mile.
Gosh.
Well, at the end of that race, I did 350 miles total.
Good night.
And I actually hit every a mile every hour.
Every hour.
So I actually completed it. So I was the second person to ever complete that challenge.
Good grief.
And I don't know, honestly, if anybody else has done it yet.
There's 2 crazy buggers out there that you and whoever else.
Yeah, he is crazy too.
Oh my gosh.
Well, of course, realizing if I knew some sleep, if I could get my hydration, nutrition, and then just suck it up more mentally tough, what could you do? And the next year I did 402 miles, which is the longest I've ever done in
same event.
Same event. The next year I dropped 402 miles in the 6 days.
Good grief, brother.
Yeah. So, and that really changed my perception on what your body's capable of.
That's mind boggling, like absolutely mind boggling. I don't think listeners, if you think about that, like 100, do you think the first one 144 hours?
It's 144 hours, yeah.
144 hours. And that's like getting up and running at least 1 mile each hour. That is insane. When you see this kind of stuff, I love the fact that you look at it through the eyes of discipline, not like wishful thinking. That you wouldn't do this if you just rolled up and like, hey, what's this going on? I think I'll sign up. Like you literally have the belief in that you can do this, but also the discipline to take through. That was one of the hardest things when we started Addict to Athlete in 2011 was the athletes loved race day. They loved the medals, the t-shirts, the fan folk. They loved it all. What they didn't love is the training in between.
Yeah.
It's the when no crowd's watching. How do you train? I mean, don't get me wrong. You've disciplined yourself for many years. When did it start becoming a little bit more agreeable rather than, or has it, how have you allowed discipline to kind of like take the forefront in your life? Because so many of us struggle with that, especially in addiction recovery. They have a hard time, with discipline.
Yeah. It's interesting you ask me that right now because over the past 4 months, June, July, August, and then September, this is the first time in my entire life that I haven't missed a single day.
Oh my gosh.
I was always the 5-6 day a week kind of training guy. And now being 7 years out of my stem cell transplant and cancer treatment, I don't know what it was that struck me. Maybe it was the June 1st because that's my stem cell transplant date.
Yeah.
You always feel like the cancer's going to come back, and so I figured that you know what, as good a shape as I'm in, I need to be in better shape. And I really just made this commitment on that day that I'm going to see how long I can go before I miss a day.
Oh man.
Now, one day I did 3 miles, but there have been a couple of weekends on a Saturday and a Sunday where I did 76 miles.
Good grief.
So it just depends on the time and the schedule, but I've been really consistent for the first time in my life, never missing a day. And I actually am I feel that discipline is going to set me up for across the years that's
Oh my
coming up
gosh.
the December 28th.
You're doing it again.
Yeah, I'm doing it again. And I've got to beat the 402 miles.
Maybe 2026, I'll come down and join you and do as many as I can. I'm not going to do one mile an hour. That's crazy, dude.
No,
Right.
it would be awesome.
Well, then with that, how the world do you create balance, brother? Because you are a busy guy. You have a professional career. You've got a family. You've got all this stuff. You prioritize time for you for this mechanism that, again, so many of us don't think we have time. Whenever someone says, I don't have time, we know that's a lie. It's what would you rather spend your time doing?
Right.
How have you created balance? Because brother, I know of you and your schedule and what you do. You're busy. How do you carve out enough time for you and make that a priority?
Yeah, man, I got a busy job. I mean, I'm the fire chief for the city of Orem, and
which is a large city for anyone not living in Utah. It's a big city.
It's a city that serves 100,000 people. It's the city of Vineyard and Linden.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 130,000 people. 90 plus firefighters, and just all the administrative responsibilities. What I've had to do is to make this happen. I've had to get my butt in bed early, and I got to get up in the morning and do it because life just happens.
Brilliant.
And if I don't go before work, then the chance of me meeting that goal or sustaining this, seeing how long I can do it without missing, it would make my challenge much harder. And so I've prioritized getting my bed 9 o'clock, and then I'm up no later than 5, and I go out till 7. So I'm getting 2 hours in every morning. And that's a combination of running, walking, not just all running.
Yeah.
Because these multi-day races, there's a lot of walking.
I don't think people realize that. It's not just a dead sprint.
No, yeah. And I've lived by the motto that if you're running with your friend, if you can't have a conversation, then you're training too hard.
Yeah.
Now there's certain times, right? Speed work or fartleks, different kinds of types of training that, you push the lactic threshold for sure, but just your day-to-day training, make it fun. And you have to have conversation, or you just throw in some earphones and you're just there talking to yourself,
Absolutely. I mean? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an amazing, that's an amazing analogy. And I think sometimes we think, well, running, it just sucks no matter what. And a lot of us have that. But you know what? Once you get into the rhythm of it and you start seeing the benefits, and you'll start feeling it fairly quick. You'll lose it just as fast if you stop. But once you start getting into it, you feel like, yourself, improving mentally, physically, emotionally, all these components. I think it's amazing that despite your diagnosis, your cancer treatment, all this stuff, that you didn't give up. You caught your second wind.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that this race across the ages, that this is a circle race, which again, it's like hamster on a wheel, brother. It's like, how in the world it would take so much to like not get, I guess, bored or out of your head or in your head. I'm curious. It seems like every time something crazy happens to you, from the beginning to your cancer to treatments to this, you're running in circles.
Oh, dude, let me just tell you the craziest thing. If the running a mile circle blows your mind, first of all, I got to tell everybody that I would never run on a treadmill. I'd never run on an indoor track. I mean, it didn't matter what the weather was. I'm outside.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't wrap my head around being confined to that.
It's like purgatory. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago, it's called the 6 Days in the Dome. It's an ice skating rink, quarter mile, 400-meter track indoors back in Wisconsin. I went back there, and based on timing, I signed up for their 72-hour race. Well, for 72 hours, I didn't leave that 400-meter track, and I finished 241 miles, set a course record. It's over 1,000 laps.
So who's this Utah guy coming out here?
It's so crazy to me because I actually was really good for 60 hours. And then I just did these micro sleeps, man. I would sleepwalk the straights with my hand just kind of brushing the wall. And then
muscle memory.
It was what I needed.
That's insane.
I never walked through the curve into the wall. It was just like a 30, 40 second, close my eyes, keep walking. But 241 miles later, I mean, it was a course record, and nobody beat it this year. So we'll see how long it stands.
How in the crud do you hear about these events? So like amazing.
Yeah, this is my buddy. This is my crazy buddy Steve that finds all these races.
He's like,
then once you start looking, oh man, they're all over the place.
So he's like you, that Jed Jensen is to me. He's like, Blue, we should do this one. I'm like, man, you're insane.
Oh yeah,
I love it. You need that, right? You need a support system, a friend group that's going to lift you up and challenge you rather than just allow you to get complacent. Don't you think? How big of a role has that played in you?
Oh, it's huge, but more than just the role and the finding the race, having the camaraderie to go with somebody, you also have somebody to blame. I never get in trouble because Jessica's like, I'm like, hey, this is Steve's fault, or this is Sean's fault, or all the guys that I've ever run with, they take all the heat.
Man,
so it was really good.
You're like, I really like this.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's awesome. I also think the fact that you still are putting things out there, like that little bit of a carrot. I mean, one of the things that I know is very real for a lot of people, that at first I'm like, I've never heard of this, but I started seeing it, is post-race depression, where you train so much for this amazing epic event, but then once you're done, you're like, well, that was it. So that's as good as it gets. It's like the fish at the end of Finding Nemo, right? In the bay, but still in the bag. It's like, well, now what? Your now what's have kind of pushed you, not just in events and locations and distances, but just like commitments. How have you not gotten bored or complacent? Has it been because you've put so much variety into your experiences through running and racing?
Yeah, it's totally adding something to the bag that keeps you. One thing that I've always done is before the event, I sign up for the next event.
Brilliant.
That way, you finish the race on St. George Marathon, finish the race on Saturday, and I know I'm going I've already signed up for the 12-hour race at Liberty Park, just going in a 1.5 mile circle.
We're doing
in
that,
November.
That's my first one. We're going to be doing the loops, man. We'll be there with you.
It's going to be so awesome.
It's going to be good.
But that's how I've avoided being burnt out, let down, post-race depression is I don't have time. I've got to get to the next event. And now whether that's 1 month, 1 week, or even 6 months down the road, if you put it on the calendar, you got something you have to work towards.
There's got to be a carrot out there.
Yep.
So you say you have dabbled in Ironman then?
Yeah, I think I've done 13 full Ironmans.
That's amazing.
And the hard thing with those is, as I swim fast, I suck on the bike, and then I run okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's training, because what 100%. I do for the Ironman is I jump on the bike, I ride around the lake, and chalk it up as okay. That's it. You know what I mean? Because I get so bored riding a bike, I can't do it.
Really?
No,
See,
I'd rather run
I'd much
100
rather
miles
ride.
than ride
Dude,
100
that is
miles.
wild. That makes perfect sense though.
Yeah.
It's it's your rhythm. I think that that's kind of crazy. So you've done Kona, right?
I haven't ever qualified to go out there. Nope.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
That
Well,
surprises
it's
me.
because I don't bike.
That's the reason.
Yeah, I mean, if I biked, I could probably. The fastest Ironman swim I finished was 52 minutes,
Jeez.
and the fastest bike I've done is I just barely broke 6 hours, where they're doing 4.5 hours,
Yeah,
right?
that's amazing. Yeah.
And
that's
then I've
crazy.
run 3 hours and 30 minutes in the marathon, which still isn't like Heath or
Yeah.
like the guys around here that are professional Ironmen.
Yeah.
Can't,
Yeah. I
can't
get
compete
passed
with
by
those
those guys.
But if I trained for that, I think I could. I think I could qualify.
Yeah. But I think there's something awesome about running kind of being like your flagship, because it is. I mean, I've talked about this, preach it from the high hills. It's running, if you want to heal your mind, body, and soul, you run. You got to move. Movement equals healing. And so, listeners, as you're listening to what Mark's talking about, remember he started literally walking around the block, then doing a few races, and then turned into this. And the cool thing about it, the balance and the persistence is that it's paid off in ways that he's been able to see things, experience things. I'm sure you've met incredible people out there, running and maybe even kind of struggling, helping that finish line. Has there ever been a time where you paid the ultimate price and got the dreaded DNF?
I know for sure. I think with the number of races, if you do the amount of races we do,
Mm-hmm.
I think this last weekend ago, Top Utah Marathon was my 469th
Good.
marathon, and which is in ultra races too.
That's
But
incredible.
that's total races. But absolutely, I hit my first DNF ever. I set myself up to do it. I ran in 2006. I ran the Wasatch Back Relay. I
Mm-hmm.
did it solo rather than
Holy
a relay
cow.
race. So it was 180 miles back then. I think it's just over 200 now. But
Now, yeah.
I finished that race, and then the following Thursday, well, actually, the following week, I went and did the Badwater challenge through Death Valley. It's 135 miles from Death Valley to the top of Mount Whitney. So I did two big races back to back, and then I picked the most challenging race you can ever find around here is Kachina Mosa.
The Kachina Mosa. I've
And
heard
so,
stories. I've watched that.
The week after those two big events, Jessica and I started that 100K race, and we got to the bathtub. I think it's like mile 48 or 50 of 62 miles, and we had just timed out. We didn't make it. And
yeah, brother.
Looking back, I wished I'd have just said, here's my bib, go finish the race. But between me and Jessica both, we were spent and
Good.
got my DNF.
I'm curious.
Got the monkey off my back.
I've heard that. I've heard that Kachina is one of the most. What makes that one so hard? I mean, is it the elevation? Because
it's the elevation. It's in August, the first Saturday, so you got heat, you're exposed, and there's distance between your aid stations.
Yeah,
it's a beast. It's like, for me, I've always looked at it as it's the hardest 62 miles of the Wasatch 100.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
geez, man, see that kind of stuff, brutal. I remember when I was running Squaw Peak with Jerem, and he was pointing out the different directions Kachina goes. I'm like, it just deeper and deeper. I'm like, I'm never signing up for that, man, because it looks brutal. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting that here in your own backyard is one of the most challenging like events you've been to.
Yep.
I think that's amazing. Now you've also done it probably, like, I wouldn't say professionally, but also like just because you are who you are, you've done a lot of coaching and stuff too. When you see someone that's kind of looking for some advice, where do you begin with them? Because I know, like, you teach them the basics, the fundamentals, like you said, if you can't hold the conversation, you're going too hard. What are some coaching, like, I guess, tips or advice that you apply to yourself that you think every person that begins a journey like this should probably understand?
Yeah. And so never really formally coach, never paid to coach, but running for so long.
People ask you questions.
Yeah. Tips and tricks. Well, I think the thing that everybody needs to know that I just hammer is that no matter what, you can do it and you can finish, especially when you talk about road marathons, trail marathons, 26 miles. Now it's to a lot of people, that's a freaking long ways.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you boil it down, and this is example, top Utah Marathon, 5, 6, would have been like 7 years ago. Mile 26. There's 2/10 left. It's a left-hand turn, 2 blocks to the finish line. And I'm running, and it's not a fast marathon, maybe 4.5 hours. And I'm coming up behind a girl that I can see she's got wobbly legs
Yeah.
and she's got the stagger. And at that corner, she falls down. Well, there's a
Oh,
cop,
yeah.
there's a cop in the intersection, and man, they come running over to her. And by the time that was a couple blocks away, by the time I get there, I can hear the cop. He's calling for an ambulance. And I'm like, oh hell no.
Hey, don't
She
do
doesn't
that.
need an ambulance.
Yeah.
And basically got her up, put her arm around me, and I just kept telling her, look, you can see the finish line. It's 2 blocks away, and you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna hate yourself tomorrow morning if you just don't lean on me and let's go. And so there's been so
Oh
many,
my gosh.
so
brother.
many races like that where it's her first marathon
Yeah.
and she's running an amazing time, but 2 blocks from the finish, she's absolutely spent. And I'm like, oh no, you're not.
You're gonna
not
hate.
spent.
You're gonna hate this.
You're gonna. I mean,
You're right, brother.
so temporary pain, temporary. You're gonna have that DNF on your wall forever.
Yeah, you'll feel
And
it.
so I love that I've had the opportunity to coach people across the finish lines that would have just dropped out.
Yeah, man.
And she'll never do that again, I believe. And that's what I think
Yeah.
encourages me to help those people that are so close, because you just never know what
You
you
never
can
know.
do until you have some assistance,
I love it.
Yeah. It's
So
a really
that's
cool experience for me.
That is a cool tip. And that's kind of what he's talking about, you guys. Is like, we get a lot of people walk through here and they're like, I love the content that you guys give, but I'm not a runner. And I'm like, that's a lie. We all are and we all were. So it's about, you're stronger than you think you are.
Yeah.
Like, let's just go. You don't need to become an Olympic, marathoner.
Yeah, no, man, here's the thing.
Come on.
For all your listeners, I mean, sure, what they're having to the addicts to athletes, what you have to overcome is way harder than getting physically in shape or
So
finishing a
true.
marathon. I mean, it's an addiction that, yeah, it's mental, it's physical. But having that goal to push through to achieve something. I've got a lot of buddies that don't run one single step in a marathon, and they'll finish 6.5, almost 7 hours. They're on the cutoff, but they're still carrying their body 26.2 miles because
Absolutely.
that's what they commit to. And whether it's training, running fast, it doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
setting the goal and putting your mind to it and not quitting.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You can't quit.
Absolutely. And listen to that, listeners. A 3-hour marathon time is still 26.2 miles, just like a 6-hour marathon time is.
Yeah.
It's still the same distance. That doesn't matter.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you also have been able to bench your times. And although your peak times have come and gone, like those are yours, and you can do it. I think it's one of the most beautiful things when you're well trained and you're well focused. When you line up, even if it's going to be a hard day, you've done it before.
Yep.
You've done harder things, and I think sometimes we forget that even in addiction recovery, you've done harder things. So just lean into it. Well, brother, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, man. Seriously,
What a cool opportunity.
yeah. I mean, here we are in Orem. I hope you just said, "Hey, I'm going to take a break for a minute."
Yeah.
Down the street.
I'm gonna find me a treat on the way back to the
I don't
office.
blame you, dude.
Yeah.
You've earned it. But listeners, you've been well. I think Mark and his family, really his family, you guys, I remember bumping into your boys doing a sweep once we were breaking down an aid station. Immediately I'm like, those are definitely Mark's boys. They were funny, like making fun of my coach Jed. And I'm like, I like these guys a lot. So it's been kind of cool to see how much your family has influenced that. I think one of your sons is an officer, right? He's in law enforcement?
Yeah, Holden. He is an officer here in Orem, and Hayden, my other son, is an officer in Linden.
That is cool.
So I got 2 boys that are cops, one that's just finished as nurse practitioner, and the other one is working in the medical field as a CNA in the ICU, trying to figure out just exactly where he's going with his life.
Taking them same steps that mom and dad took, huh?
Steps. Yep.
That is awesome. That's way cool. Well, all the best to you. Mark, we'll see you maybe, on the bus line going up to the marathon on Saturday.
That'd be awesome.
But then again, we'll bump into each other around Liberty Park, man.
For sure.
It's going to be awesome.
Right on.
So listeners, check this out. You can download this podcast, share it with anybody who needs a little bit of inspiration. And until next time, do your best to turn your mess into your message.
Awesome, man. Yeah, dude, that was freaking awesome.